inviting me. Excellent. It's being recorded. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great opportunity to talk to you all about what we have been doing at Software Heritage. I don't know if you know Software Heritage, so I'll take the time to kind of explain the infrastructure and the services that we have, a little bit about the context we are in, because I'm head of open science operations at Software Heritage, and there's a lot of things being done for open science, even though it is not an infrastructure only for open science. And I will ask for your help. So I hope that you can help us. But it is a collaboration between Software Heritage and open infrastructure and a larger community that needs to archive software. So for that, I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Let me check if I can share my screen.
Hold on, that's me. Give me a second.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I think that I can.
Oh, you can? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have something that says that I can.
Oh,
Is
you
that
can.
okay?
Yeah, you're great. Okay.
Good, good. Maybe because I arrived first into the meeting,
Dude, I don't know how
it
this
gave
works.
me some rights that, like superpowers. Okay, so the project that we are starting in June is called Open Source Program Office Research Assets Dashboard and Archival Resource, which is in short, OSPO Radar. Okay, it's thanks to the Sloan Foundation, we have funding to do things that we wanted to do for a long time. We started doing, and now maybe we can get to there. The presentation today will not be focused on that, but this is kind of the aim that we have. Now, recently, and this is quite nice, research has become, software in research has become more recognized. We see that in the UNESCO recommendations and the French National Plan. Even Software Heritage is specifically mentioned in the French National Plan, and it is very important to know that we are trying to build the pillar of open science, the software pillar of open science, and linking between the articles, between the data and the software is a key functionality in open science. And what is at stake? We identified 4 aspects: archival, making sure we can access the software; reference, make sure we can identify the software artifacts. And here comes the SWID, as Claire said. The SWID is the software hash identifier that we have developed since the beginning of Software Heritage. Now an ISO standard. At the beginning of the story, it was a software heritage identifier, but for the community, it changed the name to software hash identifier because you can actually compute a SWID locally. So this is something interesting to note. There's the site for credit, which is different from reference because one is for identifying the artifact itself, but the citation is for getting credit. We want to reward researchers for their work. And finally, describing software, describing the project and the artifacts for visibility. And this is the one key point that we want to put forward with the project, the OSPO Radar project. Now, I've already started a long and very nice journey in the ecosystem. In 2020, an European Commission report called the Scholarly Infrastructure for Research Software was published. I don't know how many of you know this report. It is really, well, I call it my Bible because I work every day to implement this report. And we have a European project called FAIRCO for EOS that actually ends at the end of May, where we are building these connectors with different infrastructure in this space. And as you can see on the slide, the scholarly ecosystem is built with scholarly repositories, with publishers and aggregators, and we want everything to be connected to the universal source code archive, so Software Heritage, which is not catering only for academia, it's also for industry, public administration, and cultural heritage. So the short-term recommendations from this report are strengthening the interaction between these infrastructures, metadata standards and tools, and the generalization of the usage of the PIDs, which are extrinsic or intrinsic. But here we talk about the intrinsic identifier, the SWID, and we just mentioned the ease of standardization, but we can, I think I will mention that every 2 seconds, but tell me if it's too much. On the kind of QR code that we have here, it's a very long video, but it's showing the demos for all the connectors that were developed during the FAIR-CoFIOSH project implementing this report. As you might all know, research software is just one very small part in a very big stack, right? Because software, research software, is not created in isolation. And some of the parts of the stack are fragile and we need to archive them. In the diagram that I'm showing here on the right, we have Konrad Hintz's dealing with software collapse. This is a problem. And if we don't take care of the software can collapse because it's a big stack with a lot of dependencies. Some of these parts we can archive in scholarly repositories, but other parts are not things that we want or we can archive in scholarly infrastructure. So we need this universal source code archive. And this is when I tell you, meet software heritage. So I don't see all of you, but if you can tell me in the chat who knows already about software heritage, that would be very helpful. Just in one line, it's here to collect, preserve, and share all the source code. These figures are from January 2025, so they are not up to date. You can go to archive.softwareheritage.org and you will have the current numbers. And they are kind of going up very quickly every day. We are building an open science pillar, but we're not only building this pillar because we are making a culture change since 2016. First with this mutualized infrastructure, but also with multiple services and tools, building bridges between communities with CodeMeta, with SciCodes, with domain-specific communities, and connecting with policy organization and funding agencies. So this is important because the recognition of software in academia wasn't natural when I started my journey at Software Heritage in 2017. And we're trying to seize and create opportunities at different levels. And with you guys here, it's kind of the international level of opportunities. And I'm very happy that I had this, that I'm here with you. Now, making research software easier to find and use is the tagline that we want for OSPO Radar. I will take a few, let's take a moment to look at the project 3 main objectives. First is developing a software assets dashboard service that we don't have yet to improve metadata management, simplify workflows for OSPOs, and increase visibility. We want also to adapt the CodeMeta standard vocabulary to address specific requirements for OSPOs. Something that I haven't said is that CodeMeta is a vocabulary, is a community vocabulary, but it is also an open source kind of project where we have a project management committee. I'm chair of this project management committee, and we are trying to improve it. We have released the V3 in 2023, and we are aiming to release the V4 maybe by the end of the year or early 2026. And we are also developing the CodeMeta generator, which is a tool to generate a CodeMeta JSON file. Not sure if you have heard about that, and maybe I will come to that in the next few slides. And finally, one of the objectives here is to have an open science help desk to give the help needed in the community to train and know what to do with software, because a lot of people don't know. So some don't know what to do with software, some know what to do with software, but don't know how to link that to publications and data. So we want to create materials and have that available. I have Josh Greenberg's quote here: "Open source software development is an essential piece of the science ecosystem that drives and sustains scientific discovery. Software Heritage OSPO Radar project will make visible that influence by giving research institutions a set of tools to better manage, document, and share their open source work." So that's what we're aiming, and I hope that we will manage to do that as beautiful as possible. And now, first question for you that I have, and I will, well, you can write in the chat. I'm opening also the chat. What strategies do you believe are most effective for building bridges between communities and influencing adoption? So this is something to think about. I'm not going to stay here long, but if you want to discuss that at the end of when maybe we'll have questions, we can discuss, also come back to this question, because we want to get software heritage adopted as an infrastructure. Also have other infrastructure adopt software heritage. We don't need to archive software in both places. We can have it. We can be the infrastructure, the Universal Source Code Archive. So we'll be happy to discuss what do you have in mind about this question. And I'm going to continue, because you want to hear more about software heritage, maybe, unless someone wants to open their microphone and say something.
There are some comments in the chat for you there.
I'm going to see
you
that.
You might want to take a look at those as well. There's like
Excellent.
3 or something.
This is true. The connection between publications and software is a big focus for us. That's great to look at that you are looking at it too. Collaboration.
Yeah, yes. I think if you're not aware of the work Jonathan Starr is doing, I think, or coordinating, I think it would be great to connect with him. I think you're working towards very similar objectives, and there's more work to do here than we can possibly take on. So
yes, let's have this. I think that he was at the CHAOSS workshop, and we are working with about code meta and other metadata interoperability objectives. Yeah. So yes, let's continue that discussion.
Awesome.
I see also about being dependent on open source. This is, I agree, this is a question that we need to see how we answer. Okay. Any other takers to say some comments live, maybe?
I think my comment may come from a few that were in the chat. So it seems like there's a couple different groups of people that would be part of that adoption process. So some may be the scientists themselves. Some may be the institutions that the scientists may be part of. So for example, a university, and kind of, providing influence at the OSPO level at a university, or even providing influence at an administration level. So I'm not sure how you're all handling that, if you're working with, say, administrators at organizations to help them understand why this is important for the folks that work at those organizations. And being at a university myself, I naturally just think about this at a university context. So I think that's with the adoption stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt, for saying that comment. There are different levels of conversations. I agree. Sometimes in the institution, they don't talk to each other. So it's difficult for us to get adoption, because sometimes the researchers will want to adopt, but then there will be not blocked by, they need to convince their institution that this is the way forward. I agree that we need to do the convincing and influencing on the different levels with the different types of services that we provide. So that's a good remark to keep in mind, the different profiles that are in the community. Yes. And what do they need? Kind of what's the use case for a scientist, and what's the use case for someone else in the institution. Okay, great. Thanks for this conversation. Anyone, Matt, do you want to continue, say something?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Good. Anyone else wants to jump in?
Yeah, this is Patrick. The Apera Foundation did a survey at last year's CHAOSS conference, the .edu domain administrators and a professional sort of association for IT in higher ed. And it was, one of the results was that while, and I forget the exact numbers, but nearly 90%, maybe high 80% of respondents said that they were using open source. Almost 80% said they didn't have a sort of strategy or a sort of internal controls or management. It just sort of was emerging on campuses, or had emerged, and they didn't understand the dependencies. So that's where my comment came in about awareness. It's difficult to build bridges with people who don't think they need a bridge. So I think for us, we've been trying to raise awareness about the level of adoption, whether internally and formally, or organically, or even through third-party service providers that are often implementing and integrating open source tools as part of the services and platforms that they're offering campuses. And I think once campuses can appreciate the dependency they have on open source for core infrastructure of teaching and learning, research, administrative computing, then I think they'll be more willing to start maybe building the bridge from the other bank instead of just us building it from our bank.
That's a very interesting remark. So showing them that this is something that is needed by showing how dependent they are on open source. That's really, I'm taking that comment. We'll see what we can do, how we can help, because for now it's difficult, but this is one of the directions we want to take with the dashboard, with the radar, to identify software in open source software in the Universal Source Code Archive. Anyone else wants to comment before I move to more technical details on software heritage and how it works? But great conversation. Maybe we can continue that after the technical part. So what I said it will be technical, the next slide, because this is what we call the software deposit service at Software Heritage. I'm going to walk you through this diagram. We have a researcher. This researcher works in an open platform, in a Forge, in Git, in GitHub, in GitLab, in Bitbucket, somewhere. And this researcher might work with a full team. They can already use a save code now, saving the software. We have developed the service depositing software with, so I think I have one of the future slides, the collaboration with HAL, the French National Archive, where actually the researcher will submit a SWID into this other infrastructure, a scholarly repository, which will identify the object in software heritage. Now, sometimes a reviewer, a digital archivist can check and validate. That's the process done in HAL. There's some validation of the metadata. So there's a review of the metadata. And this is deposited in software heritage. And this software gets a metadata record in the scholarly infrastructure and the full development history, which was developed on the Forge in software heritage. Different use cases here are possible. So the first one was the save code now. For those who do not know the Save Code now, it's just like the Wayback Machine, putting a link, and everything is on Software Heritage if it's open in a forge that's accessible online. There's the possibility to deposit a zip file with metadata, and have this this kind of mechanism when there's the both sides, the full development history with some metadata. And we have some SOAR protocol to do that, but this is more really technical for infrastructure people. So I'm going to move to what we have now, which will resembles a dashboard, but this is for the infrastructure that are connected to Software Heritage. And today we have HAL, that's the first prototype that we've built. Then we had 2 publishers joining with eLife and ePOL. ePOL is Image Processing Online. In the Faircore for EOS project, some has joined as well, like Zenodo, that was announced in October 2024, so very recently. Everything that comes into Zenodo goes to Software Heritage. And also the publisher Dax2 is have this interaction with Software Heritage. What they have access to this deposit administration view, where they see when they deposited software. This is at the moment something that's only for those infrastructure, open for those infrastructures. And we are looking into how this is useful for other infrastructures that want to connect to Software Heritage. If you have in mind this major scholarly ecosystem diagram from the CHAOSS report, this is the way forward. We want a community-driven vision to interoperate and to be connected. The success story, everything was built on this success story with HAL. And today, what you see when you're on HAL is this view. This is the metadata record and the connection to Software Heritage. Recently, they developed also the possibility to view it as an iframe on their metadata record. So actually browsing the code on the scholarly infrastructure. So connected, but not, you don't need to go out from the infrastructure to view the code that was archived. For the metadata curation part, there is a moderator that after the submission of the deposit on HAL, they will download the package or view it on Software Heritage and do a very short, in terms of, they don't review the code, they review the metadata. If the title and description are aligned, authors are correct, license is existing, and some other checks. And then after this moderation, the software, if there was a software deposit, gets to Software Heritage, or just the metadata. That's the current process. And you might ask yourself how to describe software. We need the metadata. And where is the metadata available? Now we see that it's available in a lot of places. I've talked about the scholarly infrastructure, so you see HAL and Zenodo here. Scholarly publishers are also infrastructure with maybe better metadata than the one on the scholarly repositories. There are also metadata available from package managers and from the forge itself. So on the code repository, there might be additional metadata that's not in the code. And you have, of course, the catalogs and registries that have additional metadata that can be added. All of these metadata that I've just said are extrinsic metadata. And we at Software Heritage want also to see the intrinsic metadata, the one that is in the code, because we know that the source code, the metadata that lives in the code, stays with the code and is not lost in translation. So this is why we do recommend using a code meta.json file in the code so that it can be saved with it, and that we can index it and interpret it and use it. So that's my recommendation, and it will be the recommendation with the OSPO Radar dashboard. It looks like that, a code meta.json file. It's more machine actionable than a human readable intrinsic metadata file like a README. A README is can be a description, can hold a lot of information, but since it's not machine actionable, it's harder to interpret in a mass automation. And we are using CodeMeta because CodeMeta is special. CodeMeta tried and is still working on mapping the landscape of metadata vocabularies. And it's a lot. This diagram is from 2018. We can say it grew since. And also there was other, it wasn't exhaustive at the time. CodeMeta is an academic community. It's a vocabulary that's a subset of schema.org. And we have this tool, the CodeMeta generator, as I said, to create the CodeMeta.json file. Now, it works, the GIF here. Generating a SWID is easy as ABC. So we talked about metadata, now about the SWID. Now, in this slide, we see how easy it is to generate a SWID for a piece of code. But if you want to know more about SWIDs and about how to use SWID, there was a training session that we recorded yesterday. And this is something also that we can talk about if you are interested in how the software hash identifier is working. And it's really a plug and play service. You don't need to own the code to get a reference SWID. And it's not only for lines of code, it's also for the directory, the revision, and the snapshot of this code repository. In the Fair Impact project, which is another European project that we've done, we've developed what we call the Research Software Metadata Guidelines. This is on GitHub and can be very helpful and will be a basis of what we will develop in the OSPO radar as the recommended metadata for software. And in these guidelines, we have identified 7 aspects: general metadata requirements, accessibility and preservation, reference and identification, description and classification, attribution and credit, reuse, licensing, and legal aspects, re-execute, dependencies, and execution environment. So a lot of metadata. It might be daunting for researchers, but research institutions should take that into account when they do recommendation of what should be done to describe software. And the last part of my presentation is another tool, I would say, because it's called the Software Metadata Curation Roadmap. We have also developed that, and we will use it for OSPO radar and for the future development of tools and services regarding metadata and software. This roadmap is available on Zenodo. We have identified short-term items, which I won't read in total. I just wanted to highlight the fact that infrastructure curation capabilities is really important to make life easier on everyone. And this is something that we need to develop. On the medium terms, I've highlighted the robust curation processes. Also, focusing on the infrastructure, because if we have automated and better curation processes, that might reduce effort and kind of backlash for asking so much metadata. And the maintenance of community standards, because if we have something that's built by the community, that's maintained by the community, this is the way that different infrastructures can align and interoperate. And this is something that we do with CHAOSS. Finally, in this long-term item, foster institutional collaboration. And I hope that is what we start today here, being here with you. Collaborating on national and international levels to share resources, share knowledge and expertise, mutualize effort, because we're in this together, and we should think about this that way. Software Heritage is proposing also a membership program, even though the infrastructure is completely open source, all the materials are open, but doing open infrastructure requires also support. So we are proposing what we call the Archives and Libraries Interest Group with some tailored support and some community around libraries. So this is specifically for libraries, and we already have some very nice partners that are members of this group. And I will finish on this call to action, because software recognition requires a global and coordinated effort. And we can create the infrastructure, but even with the infrastructure, if the community doesn't adopt, it won't work. The community will determine how things are done in practice. So I'm calling all of the community that I can call for, please get us to be mutualized, interoperable for sustainability, that we will stretch our open by default is important, get recognition and curation into the loop. And that's it for me. I'm going to add this survey that I've prepared for you, but also for other communities, because it's what we call the OSPO Radar survey. It's for us to collect information to build requirements and specifications. So please, if you have the time to complete the survey, it's not very long, and even send it to a friend. Yes, it's a way also to stay in touch with us. It can be anonymous, but you can also add your details at the end if you want to continue this discussion one-on-one. And with that, I'm going to stop. Well, I can stop the sharing. Stop sharing.
There was a request. Could you maybe either share the slides or put that survey link in the chat?
Just a second. I think that it's kind of Zoom doesn't like me anymore.
I can share the slides. Just just pulling them up. You continue on, Moran, and I'll just do that in the background.
So I must tell you that I have a message saying force quit or not force quit, that I'm trying to say, no, don't force quit on me. So if I disappear, something has come. Yes,
your voice is there, but your image vanished, just so you know. So all we see is the library at this point, but that's okay.
Let me try again. I don't know why. It's true. I've disappeared.
It's okay. It's a pretty library.
Okay, good. But I'm here. So if you have any question, now it stopped the force quit message. So I'm really here. I can see the chat, but I'm not visible anymore.
Yes, I suspect a lot of people might have a lot of questions. So I know I do, but let's open it up to other folks.
I also saw the request for the survey, and I'm putting it in the chat. I'm looking if there are any questions in the chat.
So this is great. Thank you. I have a couple. I have like a whole bunch of questions. Some are kind of detailed, and some are a bit more strategic for the software heritage. And so you had kind of walked through the process of a deposit. I'll start with maybe more detailed. You talked about the process of a researcher being able to make a deposit.
Mm-hmm.
And what would be great is to kind of understand how involved they need to be through the entire process. So for example, if I was to simply provide a link to a GitHub repository, I would imagine that's not the end of my involvement. So how much overhead does a researcher carry in this process?
This is a good question. I think I can answer on different levels. So first, saving the code with software heritage is really easy. Like you said, just a URL. You can be the researcher, and you can be anyone else in the institution. Anyone in everywhere can just save something that's online. It's really like the Wayback Machine for the Internet Archive. And I think it's really important to note that, because some pages just disappear, and sometimes you want this information to be saved for the long term. Also, if you want to save software on which you are dependent on, not your software, but other packages, this is something that you can do directly with Software Heritage by just putting the link in the archives. I'm afraid to show anything because I'm afraid to lose control of my machine. But I could have shown you. I'm going to put the link. It's save@softwareheritage.org, and this is really easy. Now, easy is not the best, right? Easy is just easy. We do want the metadata. Why do we want the metadata? Because we need to find this software. We need to understand the software, know where it came from and why is it here, what does it do, what are the keywords that are associated with it. So we suggest and recommend, and this is why the guidelines are so maybe daunting, is that there are a lot of things that you need to think about when you describe your software. And this is where it comes from the guidelines. And maybe support staff can take this part in institution where they actually do the curation of the software, where the people are creating the software, and then staff that understands metadata and understand what needs to be described. So that's the second level where.
And that's a document that would be created by a group, the researcher or a group of people. Is that correct?
So what we do have with the research software metadata guidelines, I'm going to put the link. It's a GitHub website. It's actually a GitHub repository. So if you are an institution and you want to get your specific guidelines, what you can do is take this repository, you can fork it, and for example, say it's called RSMD at INRIA. INRIA is my institution where Software Heritage is hosted. And this is something that we have planned for but didn't do yet, is using the RSMD as a baseline of recommendations. And then as an institution, you decide to drop some recommendations or add some others. Also to note that the RSMD guidelines has a checklist. So that's at the end of the guidelines, of the recommendations. And it's nice to note that checklist because someone can just apply the checklist. So that's a manual process. Ways to think forward would be to automate those checklists. So how can we take this checklist and say, is this GitHub repository, well, can I find all the metadata that's in the checklist in the repository? That would be tools to make it easier. And I think that that's a good way to think about that. We need to automate things that are maybe a bit boring, maybe a bit difficult, maybe a bit repetitive, so that it's easier for researchers to do those tasks.
Okay, and then those are kind of the two intensive engagements by researchers. Intensive, I guess uploading a link is not very intensive, but the two spots where the researcher engages, is that correct?
So the a further layer is, and this is also part of the recommendation, is depositing a metadata record in a scholarly infrastructure. So in a scholarly repository like HAL or Zenodo, or in an aggregator. For example, we have SW Math for mathematical software. And then you have the metadata that's more visible in your community. It's also very important, the visibility part. And there are use cases where, for example, in France, the reporting of your research activities is really easy when you have the records in the HAL French archive. So for French researchers, it's really important and very, like, I would say, mandatory. I would, if I was kind of, that would be a mandatory request to put it in the HAL, all the research activities, so that we can evaluate. It's easier to evaluate, easier to report in a French institution. So those are different use cases where metadata is necessary. And I think that when we are working on the OSPO radar, as we want to build this dashboard, it's also about the connections between infrastructure, because sometimes metadata records appears in different infrastructures, not only in HAL. Now, recently, and I will put a link to it if I don't crash before that, we have launched in France the French catalog of research, also to increase visibility. This is all about visibility. Software heritage is an archive. It's not about the visibility, it's about the archival. So we have this infrastructure around to increase visibility for the researchers. So this is also very, very important.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any other question?
Matt, you said you may have had some more strategic questions as
Oh,
well
yeah,
as the detailed ones.
Yeah, it's more about the organization of software heritage, and just kind of looking out into the future.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so like, how do you plan on, like, let's assume things go well, you know what I mean? And people are adopting and demand is increasing. Like, how do you have thoughts on how you go about like doing community management with software heritage, how you go about addressing demand things, because everything's going to scale. And this is just a kind of a question, maybe just not even for software heritage, but a lot of projects like this, that just how do you plan on handling that, the scale out if things go well?
Scale out, yeah. I think that I've seen this happening, because software heritage, when I arrived, wasn't even online, so you couldn't do anything with software heritage. And now it's amazing. It's kind of so many features have popped up, and there's a big team working on the infrastructure and making the features, and there's a lot of community around it, so a lot of questions, and we need to answer the questions. And we are, as we see it as a community-driven effort, by investing in the community, we are investing in advocates and people that can put the message forward. So there's adoption, there's the initial adoption, but then when it is adopted, the community grows and give support to one another. I think that that's the strategy that we are building on, and we've already started as we launched the ambassadors program in 2020. The ambassador program grew, and our way to go about that is to give ambassadors all the materials and all they need to understand and to give back to the community and put the message forward. So I think that's the strategy that we also will put in place for the metadata and the OSPO radar dashboard, and have institutions help one another to move in that space. And also by having Code Meta and the SciCodes network, all of these items are community efforts for infrastructures, for metadata interoperability, and the systems are in place, and we need to maintain those systems and continue this effort as is, and build upon it.
Okay, yeah, I'd always love to talk about this as this is unfolding software heritage with all of you, because this is something that we talk about a lot in our own project here in the CHAOSS project. just kind of an ongoing challenge and something to constantly think about. So thank you.
If I may build on that, Moran, just in terms of your software, the Software Heritage Ambassador Program, I'm curious as to the geographical spread of those that you've already recruited to that. I'm generally curious about the Software Heritage's focus on, enabling the French ecosystem versus the international ecosystem, and just wondering if there's any, I suppose, presuming you've been active so long in the French ecosystem. And in that landscape, I'm just wondering if there's, any kind of considerations from that perspective.
Thank you for the question, Claire. I'm going to put a link to the ambassadors page so you can see the spread. Actually, what we see is that we have a lot of ambassadors from academia. I haven't checked the ratio with French ambassadors, but I don't think it's a majority. I think it's really international. We have very few from public administration, for example, more in culture, heritage, and industry, and the most is in academia. But because also we do so much in academia and for open science, that's how this is also built. So we got back by having more ambassadors in academia. And from the French side, we do have a lot of French ambassadors, but I don't think it's a majority in the ambassadors program.
That's
the profile are very diverse. I'm actually, every time that an ambassador is requesting to volunteer and be part of our program, I'm very happy and surprised. Wow, that's a good fit.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions from Moran? We probably can just get a very quick one in before we finish up. No? Well, Matt, I don't know if you want to do the wrap up.
I'm good. This is great.
Oh, David, right at the very end. Quick.
Yes, so you talk about software. Is there anything about a infrastructure, like if people running something on a HPC or something in universities, is there a way they're recording that information?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. But for now, we are really focusing on the source code and the development history. And it's already a lot and not enough because, for example, the tickets and a lot of information that's around the source code is not yet archived in Software Heritage. So I would love to have answers for HPC and kind of more daunting tasks. But for now, we're really focusing on the text, the source code itself.
Great. We just got that in under the time limit. So perfect. Thank you. Nice and concise. But listen, Moran, thank you so much for this. It's been wonderful to hear everything that's been happening here, and I know we'll have the recording to share for anyone who couldn't make it in person. But thank you so much, and a reminder, because I do know that some folks here will be in the UN OSPOS for Good event in June, and Moran will be there. So we look forward to meeting you in person there. At least I do, and some other people here will too.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you so much, and really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Moran. And bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Bye, everyone.